Mike Pereira of Fox Sports joining us here now. All right, Mike, let's get into this. Where do we start? Is this a foul in your estimation? Was this a foul? I know you said it during the game. Do you still feel it's a foul?
Yeah, no question. And the league is going to come out and say it was a foul. They're going to come out and say two things, I think. They're going to come out and say, first of all, it was defensive holding. That he was grabbed, Pettigrew was grabbed coming off the line. You saw clearly the jersey was stretched. And by the letter of the rule, it was defensive holding. That should have been called. I think the league will say that. They're also going to say that since the flag was thrown, that it should have stayed down on the field. I think they're going to make a point, and I made this yesterday too, talking to people. I think if you were the league, you would have had a better chance of trying to explain why you didn't throw the flag if you didn't call it than you do have trying to say it was the right thing to pick it up since it was called. I mean, the elements of pass interference are there. Hitchkins wasn't playing the ball. He made contact first with his left hand onto the shoulder of Pettigrew, and then Pettigrew has a right to go back and try to make the catch, and doesn't have to play through the receiver. If the defender's not playing the ball, which he never did, then if he can't get back to the ball and there's contact before it hit the defender in the back, then it's interference. And so, you know, it will come out at some point rather soon that the league's going to say a foul should have clearly been called on that play.
Well, I know Dean Blandino, the current head of NFL refs, is going to be on NFL Network at 3:15 Eastern Time on the Aftermath show, and perhaps that's where he's going to make these comments that you're saying that the league is going to make. The question is how, you know, and I don't want to go too crazy here, Mike, because we saw some other great calls on the weekend. We saw a couple of times in that Ravens-Steelers game where feet get caught up on a 50-yard bomb down the field and there was no flag, rightfully so. It's just in a situation like this, it's sort of untenable, especially when it's done over an overabundance of trying to get it right, where you go and pick it up. What do you do about this sort of thing?
Well, I think you go to the official. You know, here's the most disappointing thing to me. Now, you know, we can argue the individual mixed crew thing versus the entire crew staying together. This was a new group that Pete Morelli hadn't been with all year long. Some of them, though, had been together during the season. But to me, you have a veteran in the middle of the field who throws the flag and has pass interference with all the elements there, and then after reporting it, you know, then gets in conversation with the head linesman who talks him out of it. And, you know, and I always said this, and I do believe this. I have become the all-time greatest slow motion official, and these guys have to make decisions in 1/26th of a second, and decisions are made so often not on what they see but what they feel. It's called an instinct, and I always told them, trust your instincts. And I'm disappointed that the back judge who threw the flag, you know, when the head linesman came to him and said, I didn't have enough contact, he should have said, I had the perfect angle. The back judge had the perfect angle. I had the contact. It's a foul. And nothing more would have been said about it being pass interference or not, whether or not there was holding coming off the line of scrimmage, whether Des Bryant should have been flagged for running off the sidelines onto the field to argue, whether there might have been a grab of the face mask when Pettigrew tried to get off the conversations probably wouldn't be happening just because one official didn't stick to his guns. And you know, amongst all the questions that need to be answered, I think in the off season as to where do we go from here in terms of not only training but in postseason, I think you got to get to this young man and say, when you throw it, you stay with it unless somebody comes to you and has something so totally different than you thought you saw. But you know, I think Caldwell, you know, Jim Caldwell took the high road, and I admire him for that. And I would also agree with the fact that they had other opportunities, and you have to overcome mistakes like this. But that mistake should not have happened.
Yeah, well,
Clearly,
I mean, it just was
a poorly officiated play.
It's not just the high road; it's the less expensive road as well.
That's true.
You know,
that's true.
Mike, stay right there. I'm going to take a 60-second break, and when we come back, I want to dive in a little bit more on the crew issue that you just brought up about instead of keeping crews intact, you go ahead and try and make new crews based on guys who grade out better during the regular season, and also A lot of people think Des Bryant should have been flagged for coming on the field and arguing without his helmet. Marshall Faulk said if that had been flagged, he would have been much more upset than he was about this flag being picked up. That's all coming up next with Mike Pereira in just 60 seconds. Don't move anywhere on The Rich Eisen Show. Back on The Rich Eisen Show, Mike Pereira, the Fox Sports rules analyst. That sounds too official for you, Mike. You know what I mean? I know you're a former official, but you know.
I know, and you know what? I'd much rather be in the studio with you right now than putting Christmas decorations away, which my wife is forcing me to do.
Hey, Mike, you gotta go home sometime.
I gotta lay the line. I gotta lay down the law somewhere. Come on.
You do. You also got to put it away. You got to. I mean, it's January 5th for crying out loud. So Marshall Faulk, when I brought up what a lot of people were tweeting about is why Des Bryant was not flagged for jumping on the field as soon as the flag was thrown and before it was picked up, to argue that there was no foul on the play, and he runs onto the field without his helmet and didn't get flagged. Marshall Faulk said he would have been more upset if there was a flag thrown on that than this flag getting picked up. Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, yeah, forget about the helmet aspect of it. He wasn't a player, so removing the helmet to argue with the official doesn't apply. That only applies to players. But you certainly have the discretion, whether it's a player or a coach, to flag him if he comes out to the field. How far did he come out at first? I never even saw it, quite frankly, at first, because I was trying to analyze the play, of which, by the way, if you'd have heard my outstanding analysis when they announced they were going to pick up the flag, my analysis was, wow. That's what I said.
Well.
But, it's discretionary. I think the officials saw it, and with the passion of the thing, they felt getting them right off the field, which they did, was probably wise, and it's not an automatic penalty. So that to me gets away from the crux of the issue here, which is, how they could throw the flag and then pick the thing up when it was really a foul.
Well, listen, the NFL doesn't want this sort of stuff happening where flags get picked up and then they go the day later and saying the flag shouldn't have been picked up and the whole country seeing it. You know how the operation works up at now 345 Park Avenue. They're trying to get this thing right, and they just don't want any of this happening. But so what is the fix here? By making sure that if Pete Morelli makes it as the ref, that everybody gets to stick around, even if somebody has blown a call, that it doesn't matter that crews are graded as a whole, or individuals just don't get graded anymore? I mean, how do we work this out?
Well, I mean, I liked my system better, quite frankly, in 2001 when I advanced crews all the way to the Super Bowl. I'm always been the believer that I really don't care about the best officials. I care about the best officiating. And that best officiating comes from a group of 7, not of 1. And starting in 2001, I took crews all the way through the Super Bowl, and one field judge actually got 3 consecutive Super Bowls, which ended up to be a thorn in the official side. And it was collectively bargained after that on how you would assign postseasons. And so it was collectively bargained away from the crew system and to a mixed crew system. And I don't like it when people call it all-star crews, because you can't convince me of that, because 70 of the approximate 100 eligible officials are going to work in the playoffs. So that means that you have players that finish in the bottom half of your group that are going to be in the playoffs. So they're not your best, and I struggle with that. You want to call it that in the championship games and the Super Bowl, then that's maybe one thing that I can accept. But I think you have to go back to the drawing board, and even if you have to collectively bargain it, I personally think you have to find a better way. And if you gave me my wish,
yes,
here's my wish,
yes,
I'd take my top 28 officials at this point, my very best, and work them in the wild card, work them in the division, and then I'd take my best from there and work them in the championship, and my best from there and work them in the Super Bowl. And you wouldn't have 70 officials advancing to the playoffs. You'd have 28 of your best, if you are going to stay with this concept of all-stars. But, right now I just don't like the way it works.
So if we saw an official working wild card weekend, they are not in the Super Bowl mix? Is that the truth?
They're done.
They're done. So whoever we see in divisional round, somebody
I think you have more of a chance. Now, there's an outside chance that you could have a wild card guy advance. But I think the rationale is, and it's the right rationale, you would rather have your Super Bowl officials not have 3 weeks off prior to the game. So if you work them in the division round, at least they get 1 more week work. You could theoretically in the wild card thing go a month without working, and that doesn't make sense to me. And so that's why you're likely to see them more put them in the division round.
So are you saying we've seen the last of Ed Hockley this year, Mike?
I think you could say that. Yep.
Well, because otherwise, I don't know. I need to budget the time for him. I mean, he speaks in iambic pentaculate. I mean, it's quite a.
I think he confuses 90,000 people with a jury box of 11. You know, and he needs to.
Did you hear Tirico's line of the broadcast?
Yes,
did you hear that?
I did, and I laughed. I'm sure that Ed probably didn't laugh, but you know,
that was a line of the
Ed,
broadcast.
and you. I mean, he likes, his theory is that he makes those announcements so that he can take the speculation out for the announcers that are announcing the game or from the fans, and you know, he just is. It's a little too much, and but that's Ed. He's the master of that.
Yes, indeed. Mike, thanks for taking the time. Now go get to that honeydew list, for crying out loud. Mike, come on.
It's so long, Rich. I'm not sure if I can get back to your place next Monday, to tell you the truth.
Are you going to Green Bay? Are you going there, or you're sticking?
You know, they haven't told me that yet. I'm planning to go to Seattle, and then I was going to come back, but I don't know if they're looking at possibly getting me to Green Bay. I know that the Cessna 180 that they would put me in probably wouldn't make it. So,
well, it depends on if Mr. Murdoch is using it or not. That's all.
That's true. That's true.
We'll see if it's free. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
You got it, guys.
You bet. That's Mike Pereira, Fox Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.